Welcome aboard the Travel DJ Blend podcast. Rest assured, your captain and host Brian B. has logged extensive destination event miles as a headlining private event DJ. So expect to reach new heights each and every episode. Your captain will cover everything from DJ tips and tricks, travel hacks, and entrepreneurial advice. Keep your seat in the upright position while we bring you interviews with industry pros, pop culture commentary, and of course, music recs. The perfect blend. The fasten seatbelt sign is on, as we will likely experience turbulence from knowledge nuggets and truth bombs being dropped regularly. You're going to need your tray table, as taking notes is optimal. Smoking is prohibited on this flight, but your mindset shift will be fire. Your crew will be elevating the conversation and challenging the status quo. We know you have a choice when you fly this high, and we thank you for choosing the Travel DJ Blend podcast. Here's your captain, Brian B. Enjoy your flight.
What's up, everybody? Brian B. here with the Travel DJ Blend. As I mentioned in previous episodes, this year on Season 5, I'm sharing tips and tools, things that might be off the beaten path, so to speak, that I'm using, kind of separate myself from other DJs, but I wanted to share these resources because I think it helps bring the entire industry up. So on this episode, I'll be having a conversation with my vocal coach. Yeah, I have a vocal coach. Never thought I would. Now, there are some great industry teachers and coaches out there that talk a lot about the emceeing component, the Marbecca method as one, led by Mark and Rebecca Farrell. I've actually never taken one of their courses, but clearly the feedback that I have heard has been nothing short of amazing. I know Mike Walter does microphone workshops, which I've actually been a part of those. Those have been incredibly helpful. I took Randy Bartlett's emceeing critique workshop. I don't even know if it had a specific name, but I do remember getting a certificate that I passed. That was extremely valuable. And then I believe the Bill Herman entertainment experience touches on emceeing, maybe not from the technical side, but definitely from the creative conceptualization side. And that's definitely one that I have on the radar to try to attend one of these days. That being said, I wanted to try something that was a little bit different and never could find the right thing until I had a good friend of mine, Gurminder Banga, who asked me, have you ever considered a vocal coach? And I said, not really. One, I don't know one. And secondly, I don't know if it would be a direct fit for what I do. And he proceeded to not even sell me on it, but just explain that the vocal coach he's been using, based in Canada, is able to do sessions remotely, that it's helped him tremendously. And he felt as not only an MC in the DJing space, but as a podcaster and an educator who gives talks on the regular and coaching sessions, that this might be a game changer for me because I'd be getting an outside perspective from somebody who has a wide variety of experience, not just as a performer, but with a director's eye, as you'll hear here in a moment. He's also a singer. And so he made a mutual introduction for me. We did one consultation and I said, you know what? I'm going to give this a shot. Fast forward a year and a half later, he's someone I still work with regularly. And I wanted to share this resource with you. Why? Because I don't think everybody will take advantage of this. They might think this is too woo-woo or how can this possibly affect performance? But I can just tell you that it's the attention to the minute details on a regular basis as opposed to maybe like a workshop or a critique that happens one time or over a course of a few days. This is something that is ongoing for me, and I can notice a material change in the way that I approach events. After about 3 months of exercises and following wherever he was going to take me, I finally said, hey, I now understand why these exercises are useful and how they can help me. Would you be open to me talking through what I actually do and critiquing some of my talks, helping me prepare for events? And getting that critical eye from somebody who's not in the DJ industry has been invaluable. He sees things differently. He doesn't approach events the same way. And so I'm getting this other perspective that I'm able to pull into my event. I'll give you one quick example. Typically, the way that I would deliver a grand entrance would be similar from event to event. Names change, but by and large, the script is the same. The way I would approach it would be the same, and where I would walk, how I would place emphasis on certain words. But as we started going through this announcement and me rehearsing this with him, he said, let's look at the layout, which I always do anyways, mainly for speaker placement and where I am to be placed. But we did this with with the MC side in mind. And he said, the normal place where you would stand in the middle of the dance floor doesn't make sense for this. And the way that you would project your voice in giving this grand entrance doesn't make sense for this. This is an event that has only 60 people. And so he encouraged me to get out there in the middle of the room where the tables are, not where the dance floor was, which was a little bit behind all of the tables. And my concern was, hey, there are people behind me who are going to see my back if I'm in the middle of the dining area. And he said, you know what? That's okay, because you're allowing them to feel the energy and watch the emotions of the people you are speaking to. So don't worry about those folks. Eventually, make a shift. You want to be able to place eyes on everyone, but don't feel like you have to go in a hurried circle just to make eye contact with everyone. There is something that people can gain by just watching the eyes of other people you are addressing. And that was a game changer for me. I had never thought of it in that way. So I think you're going to really enjoy this conversation. My hope is that some of you will take advantage of this. I don't get any commission or anything like that for sharing some of these tips. I just know that it's made a difference for me. Not many people in our industry are doing this kind of thing, and I know it can take your performance to a new level. But before we get started, I wanted to play all of my podcast sponsor spots right up front so that we can enjoy this interview uninterrupted. I do want to say this about the sponsors. The only reason why I am even mentioning them to you is similar to what this episode is all about, a tool or resource that I actually use. I will never endorse something or recommend something that I'm not physically using myself or that I've seen that has made a tremendous impact in my business. So keep that in mind as we listen to these spots, and then we'll get into my conversation with Gerald Isaac, my vocal coach. Hey, private event DJs, are you still planning your clients' events with a Google Doc or a Spotify playlist? If so, let me help you out. Vibo is a music and event planning app for your clients that I've been using for years. Not only has it been a great perk in booking my services, but it's the only tool that has ever been mentioned in client reviews. Vibo saves you time. It syncs your music from your clients' requests in seconds, and it integrates with your music software of choice. Now here's an exclusive offer for my podcast listeners. Save $10 off your first month subscription by entering the promo code DJBrianB when booking your free demo on Vibo's website. This one small change will level up your business. Visit ViboDJ.com, enter the promo code DJBrianB, and book your free demo today. True confession time. In 2010, I had grown my performance team to 13 DJs, and we were about to hit 7 figures in revenue for the first time. In a small town, no less. 15 months later, we were down to 3 of those 13 DJs, and I was blaming everything and everyone. It took years for me to realize that it was my leadership, company culture, and ultimately me that were the problems. If only Brock Barton Lifestyle Leadership Coaching had been around. Lucky for you, it is available now, and to me, this is a game changer for our industry. After everything we have all experienced in the last few years, health and wellness has never been more important. And Brock Barton Lifestyle Leadership Coaching is tailor-made for our industry. Go to brockbarton.com, and for my podcast listeners, mention Brian B for a free 1-hour coaching session. You have to first lead yourself before you can lead others. This is a can't-miss opportunity. Hey DJs, real quick, Brian B here with a tip. One of the hottest DJ music pools right now is Heavy Hits. Are you familiar with it? You need to be. They cover literally every genre, from top 40 to hip hop to Latin to Afro beats and more. Not only that, but their curated playlists and charts, including trending Spotify and TikTok tracks, are second to none. The interface is easy to use, and they have a ton of exclusive edits, which I use on the regular. But you want to know the best part? For my podcast listeners, I have a special promo code that will give you a 30-day trial for $5. Yep, you heard that right, $5. Go to heavyhits.com and enter the promo code BrianB. That's heavyhits.com, and the promo code is BrianB, all one word, no spaces. Take advantage of this right now and up your music game today. Well, hi, Gerald. Thanks for joining me on this podcast. I'm super excited to have you on here with me. How are things out there in Canada for you?
Oh, they're really great. We're a little bit snowy and a little bit cold. Otherwise, everything's good.
Well, it's like that here in certain parts of the U.S. too. Luckily, where I'm at, it's, about 50, 60 degrees. So we'll take it. Your background is so fascinating. I wanted to kind of start with just your career a little bit and how you went from performer with a lot of different things. I'm sure there's plenty plenty of different chapters in that segment of life, but to a vocal coach. Can you kind of walk us through a little bit of your journey?
I think that my beginnings do affect what I have to say. So I'll just, in a nutshell, take you on a sentimental journey with me. I'm considered a triple threat, which means that I am an actor, singer, and dancer, and good at all of those things. I began performing when I was 5 years old. I attended the Toronto School of Drama, which is in Toronto, for 12 years. And then I attended the National Theatre School of Canada. I became a member of the Stratford Festival, which is a pretty fabulous platform to be involved in at the age of 21. I worked over the years with some pretty big stars, and I learned a lot from those stars by watching them, observing them, and listening to them, and using my third eye and my third ear, as I call it, or my eye and ear of creativity. When I was at Stratford, I worked with the famous opera director who came in to direct a production of Candide, and I was playing Maximilian in it at the Avon Theatre at Stratford. And he ultimately cast me in an opera, and suddenly my trajectory changed. Instead of doing classical theater, which I thought I was going to do for the rest of my life, and probably a little film and TV, I ended up singing specialty roles internationally in world-class opera houses. And I worked over the years with many coaches and teachers on spoken voice, on singing voice, on the singing voice being an extension of the speaking voice. And my voice has remained really healthy over the years because I'm older now, right? But over my career, I worked as an actor, a singer, a dancer, a director, a teacher, and a performance coach. And while I was playing Zazu in the Canadian production of The Lion King in Toronto, an epidemic hit. It wasn't a pandemic, it was an epidemic. And I don't know if you remember this, but it was the SARS epidemic. And it had a huge impact on theater in Toronto. And it was responsible for closing the Lion King down. At that point, my wife Shay suggested that while I had time off, I should consider maybe opening a studio, because it seemed that no matter what show I was performing in or that I was involved in, I was always coaching fellow performers who would be requesting my services either between shows or on weekends and stuff. So we opened the Gerald studio, and I continued to work professionally. And here we are 20 years later.
That's great. I don't think I had even heard how you went from point A to point B. Can you talk a little bit about this idea of voice as a connection point to others? I feel like I've heard you say this in various lessons that I've been in with you. It's kind of like a philosophy I think you teach by. Maybe you can kind of put it in layman's terms for us. What does that mean to you?
My philosophy is think, breathe, speak, as you know. Think being alignment, breath being breathing, and speaking being connected to your breath and to your alignment vocally. The definition of communication, the actual definition of it, is lines of connection. And I believe that that is the connection between body alignment, breath, optimal pitch, resonance, articulation, and projection. And those are, of course, they're technical, but they're also emotional. It's the way that we sound that makes the difference between whether or not we are actually heard.
So I'm curious, like, how does that vary from another type of philosophy that someone might embrace or might teach on? How does this kind of differ from that? Is there any kind of, I don't know, certain techniques that you utilize or exercises that you do that speak to this, as opposed to maybe somebody who's more focused on tonality or something else?
My analogy of speaking is like a piece of nigiri sushi. I think that we've talked about this before. Alignment is like having a really good-sized piece of rice, and the fish that is the voice. And if the fish is too long, it'll flop over the rice and it won't be supported by the rice, which is by the alignment and by the support of breath. And what happens is our voice tends to, example, drop off at the end or go into vocal fry or not be supported. What we need to do is speak on the breath.
So good. You know, you work with so many different people in different fields, from thespians to singers to presenters to DJs like myself. What's one of the through lines of these different occupations that you tend to see people need the most work in, whether that's breathing, diction, or whatnot. And why do you feel, if there is a through line, that this is?
I feel that a lot of times people forget to breathe. People actually do forget to breathe. And they also forget to be aware of how they're standing or how they're sitting, how engaged their core is. We tend to just go ahead and speak without thinking about those things. And what happens is then we get into trouble, because if we aren't connected with those two really important aspects of speaking, then our speech becomes unsupported. When it's unsupported, we get vocal fatigue. Our voice just doesn't remain healthy, because when we're not supporting, we're not speaking on the voice. When we speak, we have to practice exhaling slowly while speaking and letting your voice resonate with full supported sound. In order to do that, you have to remember to breathe. You have to remember to support. And I think no matter what profession you are in, no matter how much experience you had, if you don't think about these things, you then will just jump right in and be sloppy in what you're doing.
Yeah, I think that's a good word to use, sloppy. And it's interesting, as I've been working with you in some of this regard, I can now look back on previous talks, or whether it's podcast episodes like this, and I go, man, that was rough, just looking back. So I definitely can feel the win and seeing the difference between breathing properly and, good posture, the different things that you're kind of bringing up. I feel like in some cases, when I first started working with you, it was like the Karate Kid movie. You paint the fence, you wax the car, all the different things. And you're like, how does this really play into me getting better as a speaker or my voice improving? I just kind of went with it. I just was like, I don't know exactly where this is going to lead. I'm just going to trust the process, I guess. I've noticed such a win in the way that I now speak and can communicate because of some of those things. And I just thought it would be interesting to hear, like, what's one of the most obscure techniques or exercises that you do that has had maximum impact for folks?
My philosophy is also that voice work is individual and it's relative to people's weaknesses and strengths. You know that.
Right.
So technique needs to be solid, but the way in is individual to each student. And I'm all about the process, as you know, and everybody's process is different, of course. So we have to find the key to that. Here's something obscure. I believe if you breathe and are in the moment, that you'll arrive at your emotional destination. Breath takes us to the emotion, and breath takes us out of the emotion. The word is the thought is your breath, the breath is the emotion. Example, if I said to you, I am feeling relaxed, relaxed would be the word that would become the thought, and the thought would become your breath, which would obviously be the relaxed breath, and then the breath would become your emotion when you speak. That's a very basic example. I could also use it in opposition. I am fearful, which takes you to a different type of breath.
I thought it would be good, since we're talking to primarily DJs who are listening to this. We had you come to our DJ conference that I produce with a couple other folks called the DJ Collective. And I just thought it would be interesting having you work with not only myself, but maybe seeing some of those folks in a session, if you will, that you kind of led. Was there anything that came to mind in watching DJs specifically, like something that they should be watching or doing to improve their craft beyond just breathing with the master of ceremonies role?
Well, yeah, they have to really watch rushing. It tends to be a problem, but one of the ways you take care of rushing is to make sure that you breathe. Again, we go back to take a breath. Tension and anxiety over performing cause us to breathe quicker. You have to harness your breath, and that is one of the most important skills in public speaking. It's one of the key elements to an executive presence is harnessing your breath. And it also helps you speak with confidence and power. When you breathe, you have good resonance. You have good placement because you're taking the time to do those things.
Do you think that the rushing is a result of just like a nervous tick? Do you think that it's just because they feel this, I don't know, for me at times there's this idea that if there's any more than 2 seconds of dead air, that like something's wrong. What's your sense on kind of why people tend to rush in our field?
They feel if they don't get to the end of what they're saying, that people are going to lose their attention. They're misjudging people's attention spans. People will listen to you. If the power of your voice matches the power of your words, people will listen. Here's an example. MCs have to use people's names a lot. Names to them are just names, but names to the people whose names they are really important because it's their name, right? So
Yeah.
nervous tension and adrenaline force us to speak much quicker than we realize.
Love that.
Using punctuation, using breath, using articulation, they slow us down. Elements of speech, pitch, emphasis, tone, tempo, rhythm. Being aware of articulation and enunciation. The elements create music in our voices. They help us resonate confidence, and they turn the audience's confidence and make them confident in what we're saying.
That's kind of a key segue as to another question I had for you was, one of the things that I think is tough in a wedding environment or even a corporate environment where you're kind of hosting these events, everybody who's attending usually has known each other for a significant amount of time. There's this rapport that they have with one another. And here we are, which I think is just an odd thing to think about, that this special moment, this special gathering with these people that everyone knows, we're the outsider, yet we're the ones who are supposed to lead all of this and bring everyone together. So I was just curious, what do you think the key to success is in communicating with an audience when you have none of that initial rapport with them? What's something someone can do to quickly kind of gain the trust of a crowd from a vocal standpoint?
Well, you have to grab their attention, and nothing grabs people's attention like a voice that's focused and full of clarity. And clarity of voice means clarity of thought. Clarity of thought means clarity of presentation. In order to gain that clarity, you have to be connected in all the ways that I've spoken about previously. But it becomes muscle memory, right? The more we work on that as presenters or performers or whatever we're doing, we're all performers, the easier it will get.
Do you think that also plays into just simply rehearsing? Like some people might feel like they just can get out there and wing it, but it sounds like what you're also kind of insinuating is that it's good to be prepared and to have gone through the lines almost in a way that is actually kind of counter to that, in a sense where it feels like it's rehearsed so well that it just feels organic and nothing rattles you in the moment, and it comes off even more organic than you even anticipated because you've been rehearsing this all along.
Well, absolutely. I believe in that. Luck is when preparation meets opportunity. So if you
Right.
want luck, you prepare for the opportunity, which would be the job. People go to Las Vegas and they see these incredible acts, and it feels like these performers are just so off the cuff. But don't think for a minute that they're not rehearsed. Don't think for a minute that they don't have these different elements in their show. When something happens and they have a formula, it always helps to have a formula, because when you have a formula, you have keys that will get you through the evening, and warm up. People have to warm up. Professional athletes would never do a big game before stretching or getting prepared, right? And professional performers and speakers have to warm up vocally before stepping up to the mic.
Well, that is another perfect segue to a question I had, which that may be the answer. Maybe there's some more to it than that. I was thinking about for myself when I was working a ton of events back to back. One of the biggest issues I would have is not going hoarse by the end of the night, or in some cases, it wasn't until the end of the weekend on the third event of 3, I just felt like I had been worked over, which wasn't fair to this new audience that was hearing me for the first time. So I thought maybe this might be a cool way to give some value here on this podcast to those who might feel like they're in a similar situation. What's one way that someone can preserve their voice? Do you have any recommendations there if they're working a ton of events in a week, or it's just an elongated event itself?
There are very simple exercises that work. One way of making sure that you are connected with your breath is to put your hand on your belly. Make sure that when you breathe in, your hand is moving away from your body, and when you exhale, your hand is moving towards your body. And make sure that that's working the right way, because some people do reverse breathing when they think about it. And then take your other hand, hold it in front of your mouth, and take a few good breaths and open your mouth like a and check and see if your breath is nice and warm and moist on your hand. If it is, that means that you're connected to your breath. Another good exercise is to take a breath and to just hum. Hum and feel the buzz in your face, because if you're feeling that, you're feeling placement and resonance and really healthy placement, so you're not sitting on your cords.
Love that. One of the things I think that a lot of people who've been in the business for a while, and I don't know, they may feel like they just can't improve on some of these things. Like you can't teach an old dog new tricks, especially when it comes to the voice, because you've been using it the same way for years and years and years. So my question to you is, do you feel like there is still opportunities for people to undo maybe bad habits or work through new ways of using the voice, even though you've got this history of using it in a certain way? What's your take on that?
Okay, well, my take on that is I don't think it's ever too late to change bad habits, but the older you get, the harder it is. But I don't think that it's ever too late to change them. It's a matter of daily practice, being consistent, turning old muscle memory into new muscle memory. Because if we don't do that, then we can't create new muscle memory. It takes time. It's not add water and stir.
Yeah.
As I said before. The more consistent you are, the easier it is. I'm allowed to say that because I'm consistent. I work out every day. I work my voice every day. I do exactly what I tell my students to do. Even if you just give yourself 10 minutes a day, 10 minutes, breathe for 10 minutes, hum for 5 minutes, lie on the floor, feel your breath, knees up, flat on floor. You feel resistance between the floor and your back. You're filling up, right?
I'm sure if someone's listening to this, they might want to talk with you about potentially working with you on their voice. So I was curious, how does that process work? How can people kind of reach out to you and get more information on?
Well, email me at the Gerald Isaac Studio at gmail.com. I'll give them a consultation. We can consult with each other free for 15, 20 minutes, and they can tell me what they're looking for and what their goals are and how I can help them achieve it. And I can tell if I can help them. But usually I am, like I said, every person I coach, every student has individual needs. That's why we have to talk is, I want to know what they're trying to fix, what they want to work towards, what their goals are.
And the beauty is with technology, this can be done remotely too. They don't have to be living in Canada to take advantage of this. They can do it anywhere in the world.
They absolutely don't, because I've been teaching people all over the place. What's great about these lessons is time delay doesn't make any difference when you're coaching on the spoken voice. When it's singing, it's a whole different matter.
Well, Gerald, I can't thank you enough for jumping onto this podcast with me. I'm sure some of our folks got some nuggets out of this, and looking forward to me getting back into the studio with you and doing some more work, because it's going to be good.
I can't wait, Bri. I always look forward to having you. We have a good time. I know a lot of this sounds cerebral, like the think, breathe, speak, but actually you can tell them it's a lot of fun, actually. I'm a stickler about technique. If we do not have a good foundation, we have nothing to build on, and we don't have a toolkit to be able to fix our own mistakes.
I think sometimes those little nuances, the nitpickiness of those voice is the part that separates the good from the great. It's those little pieces that will make all the difference.
I definitely agree with that.
I notice it all the time. Diction or emphasis on words. There's this thing that now I'm noticing on my own. I don't need you to point it out as much because I can pick it out myself and go, I could have done this a little bit better. And that's the other thing too that I kind of want to end this podcast with, is that I have noticed those little tweaks, and they're not massive for me. They're just these little tweaks have allowed me to be that much more connected to the audiences that I work with, because I have been working on it weekly and putting in the work to make these things happen. And now it's just naturally happening for me, instead of feeling like I have to remember certain things. It's just happening kind of on its own.
Brian, can I just say something?
Sure.
You are a shining example of being consistent and working hard. If you don't work at it or dedicate a little bit of time, you won't get there. When you do, be consistent with it, you will. Like just what I was saying, that old muscle memory will turn into new muscle memory. It's a matter of being diligent, and it's a matter of working at it. You have to work at things. It's not just magic.
Totally agree. For all of our listeners, appreciate you guys tuning in. We'll catch you on the next episode.
Thank you, Brian.
Thanks for listening. You can find this podcast on multiple platforms: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Stitcher. If you have a topic you'd like covered, DM us on Instagram at The Travel DJ Blend. We'd appreciate you sharing the love with a comment or a share on our social media posts for this episode. And if you are really digging the content, help us with the algorithms by leaving a review on any of the platforms we just mentioned. Until our next time together, this is the Travel DJ Blend Podcast.